sir.
Thank you. I'm Thomas Key. I'm an engineer here at Tempered Networks, and I work on cloud and virtualization and Linux things. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about our federated cloud and virtualized solution. As Ludwin mentioned, we use OpenWRT Linux, and we use the same bits in our virtual appliances as we do on our physical appliances. The great thing about that is all the features are there, and everything is available, and we only have one product to develop. The bad thing is working in the cloud, sometimes without a console and a JTAG, it's a board bring-up situation. Our cloud solutions are pure L3 network-based management. And we have a cloud connector delivered with every conductor appliance that provides a resource abstraction and management layer. And we take over a region, network, subnetworks, security groups, route tables, and images for Airwall infrastructure deployment. We kind of make it really easy to deploy and to manage across all providers, and we glue it all together with an API orchestration. I'm trying to find my way over to the cloud providers. And here we have all our provisioning for all the cloud providers available to us. We have AWS, we have Azure, and we have Google Cloud. So I'm just going to create myself an Airwall in Alibaba Cloud. So as Brian mentioned before, we can create a standalone Airwall gateway. We can also launch Windows and Linux platforms and deploy the Airwall agent. I'm going to just launch an Airwall. There's a template already there, so in a previous deployment, we're just going to reuse the template for that deployment. And what the Cloud Connector is doing right now is going out to query for all these resources that we need to manage and deploy the Airwall on. So here we've just returned. I'm going to name Airwall. You can see we have all sorts of machine types that were pulled from Alibaba, all the different versions of software that you could deploy as an Airwall. And then we have our public subnet and our protected subnet, where we're going to deploy our hosts. We could even create a network from this view.
Do you have to go with a large instance, or can you go with a much smaller footprint for using this?
The image itself really only requires 1 gig of space for the root file system, and maybe 1 gig of memory and 2 cores. So here's my confirmation screen with all the resources that I've asked it to configure. And we're sending the job off to the deployment manager. So that's going to be busy for a while. I'm going to just tell you what's going on underneath the hood. I've already done that. So when we arrive at a VPC, the customers are running a workload through the internet gateway and to the internet. What we do is we decouple that path to the internet gateway. We add another public subnet, we hydrate an Airwall, and we put a NIC in each one of those subnets. So what's going on right now in the Alibaba Cloud is we've seen the step where I sent the Airwall image to the deployment manager. So what's happening right now is that the Airwall is waking up and it's trying to determine what hypervisor, where it's living, and then gets the right drivers loaded up for optimum performance of the disk and the networking cards. Then it's going out to using Cloud Init to talk to the metadata server to get the conductor's address so it can configure itself with the conductor address and establish a connection to the conductor. Then the Airwall collects all the instance attributes and sends the capabilities and the cloud metadata to the conductor, at which time the conductor has enough information to find the route table that needs to operate on and manage. So once it's provisioned, we see that we have a view into the provider. It saves the operator a lot of clicks to just see the most important things about that cloud instance. And what we have here is the cloud attributes and the protected route table that we would manage. Also, an important thing to manage with the Airwall is the security groups, and to be able to see all the rules that are configured in that security group. So I mentioned that we manage the route table. We use policy enforcement through the management of the protected subnet router table. And we call that feature route injection. So it's disabled if the operator wants to manage the route table themselves, or if you're running as a relay, you don't need the route injection. If you do want to handle the traffic, we have individual traffic management, or you can send all the traffic to the Airwall. So here's what it looks like in an AWS route table when we manage the individual routes. It's a 32-bit net mask, so it's one route per host. And here is the all traffic. All the traffic is sent to the protected side NIC of the Airwall. So somebody had a question about the APIs. So the conductor APIs are full featured. Anything that you can do from the UI is available as an API. The APIs are ready to integrate into a heterogeneous solution. It extends orchestration tasks to any program or script. And most important to this conversation, it extends all our cloud connector abstraction layer to developers.
So I've got a question regarding geo capability. Can I have multiple Airwall conductors that communicate to each other so I can have them geographically located while still being able to have everyone be able to kind of like, what's the word? Federated across each of them so I can manage them as one, umbrella, basically?
A new feature that we had is whether your primary conductor is in the enterprise closet or out in the cloud, we can squirt out another conductor ideally in another provider and in a different region. And that's giving you a high availability solution using the cloud. The final point that I wanted to make on the conductor API is that we use the Open API standard to create, and it helps the developers create language bindings for any language platform that they want to use. So this is important in the conversation for the next couple slides. So Airwall for containers. We have two deployment options. One is the Airwall agent inside the container, and we provide tooling to our operators in the form of CentOS, Ubuntu, and Alpine Docker files. The other way to deploy the Airwall is as a vSwitch on the host. So this is what that might look like. So in the first scenario, there's a container in each one of, there's a Airwall agent, a Linux agent inside the container. And on the right-hand side is we're shimming in between the Docker networking and the physical Ethernet as like a top-of-rack switch. But we also believe using our namespaces, we could commandeer the Docker networking and put the virtual interfaces into the Airwall and manage east-west traffic on the container.
So today, we've got agents for Windows and Mac OS and Android and iOS. Do you have any support or ability to support Chromebooks or devices along those lines?
I'm sure that's possible. We use it. We can make that happen, but we don't have a solution for that right now.
So we can't, right? I'm going to jump in for a second, just real quick. Is you would think that would be the case, but since we run an Android and all those other systems, but there is some, we haven't quite, Chromebook has some things locked down and we haven't figured out how to break through those yet, but we'll get there.
Thanks, Brian. So Airwall for Kubernetes. We don't have a shipping solution for Kubernetes right now, but we're working on it, and I thought I would share some of the ideas that we have. So what we want to do is attach pod workloads to an overlay and include them with our physical and other virtual devices. So what we're thinking about doing is writing a container network interface. And as you probably already know, the container networking interface sets the policy to the pods, creates a network namespace, and configures namespaces with interface names and IP addresses and MACs and gateways and bridge names. So we would also utilize and integrate with the kubeadmin the Airwall conductor API. So for the things that the kubeadmin wanted to do with Kubernetes, we just let them do it. And then we would, anything that we wanted to manage for networking and security, we would use the Airwall conductor API to perform those tasks. Does that make sense? Okay, maybe we should check on our Alibaba Airwall deployment. It looks like it's finished. So let's give it a license. So I'm granting a license to this Airwall. And then I wanted to find.
Speaking of licensing, how would I license a air-gapped device that doesn't connect to the network at all? Would I need to pre-connect it, or is there like a loaded on USB key or something, floppy?
That's exactly right. I'm not familiar with the process, but there is a USB key that has the licensing on it. And so here's my Airwall. And I can manage it. And now this Airwall is ready to protect clients.